I know we went through how to read this. Dawn, were you here when we went through this? Like LTV, CLTV? Okay, so LTV is just loan to value. So FHA, what's the minimum down payment?
3.5%.
Okay, so you put down 3.5% out of 100, your loan to value is 96.5%. So really that's just saying 3.5% for a purchase, right? 105 CLTV is combined loan to value. So if we do an FHA down payment assistant, you put down 3.5, and then CalHFA or GSFA gives you 3.5. Now you're technically back up to 100%. And if you do another 2%, then you're at 102. So CLTV just means with any down payment assistance on top of it. So minimum FICO score to do the 3.5% is 580. And just a side note, manual underwrites. Does anybody know what a manual underwrite is, FHA or VA? So when you guys know, like when we place offers on homes, we give you the package and it has the DU in it. I always highlight the very top line where it says approve eligible. Okay. But when you have something that says like approve, refer eligible, that means that technically it's still FHA or VA doable, but now the underwriter doesn't have an automated approval like a DU. And so now we got to do what's called a manual underwrite. And it's just they need to prove a lot more, right? You're going to need to do at least 24 months of a verification of rent. Can't be late on that. You got to explain any and all late payments and collection the last 24 months. So it just adds multiple layers to it. But for in the manual underwrite world, with the way kind of all this stuff is going on secondary market, you used to be able to go down to like a 550 or even a 500. There was an investor called Carrington, and they would go down to a 500 FICO manual, but everybody got out of that. So 580 and above for both approve eligible and manual underwrites. So just heads up on that. Cash out and regular refi, you don't need to worry about. Debt to income. So this, what is debt to income? I know we went through this before. Can somebody tell me what your front end debt to income ratio is? That's 46.99 max.
I
Take
think
a
it's
stab at
all your expenses minus the mortgage.
it. Say it one more time, I'm sorry.
Is it all of the expenses minus your mortgage?
No, close. It has your mortgage. It deals with your mortgage.
It's like your income versus the mortgage payments, right?
Mm-hmm. Perfect. So it's your gross usable income to just your mortgage. FHA caps you at 46.99. So your house payment cannot be over 46 point. As soon as it hits 47 and above, you're done. Even if your back end is only 50%. What is your back end ratio?
It takes into account all of your other debts, your housing
Yep.
payment and your the minimum on the credit score.
Yep.
Credit report.
So gross income divided by your house and your monthly minimum payments. So real easy, right? Like if you guys are ever on the fly, you take debts divided by income. So, or even if you want to figure out, and somebody's like, "Hey Ryan, I make 100 grand," right? Divide that by 12. That's your gross income before taxes. And I want this house. And so, what is the max housing payment they can take on? Will be 46.99% of that. So their mortgage cannot be over 39.15 and 83 cents all in. All right. If you guys ever want to get nitty gritty on the math, let me know. There's a bunch of easy ways to figure all this stuff out. So pretty straightforward. You can do 1 to 4 units. Does anybody remember the self-sufficiency rule? What do you need to, if somebody tells you, hey, I want to buy a new multi-unit with FHA, what should be the one thing you bring up right away? With FHA multi-units and the self-sufficiency tests. Does anybody remember that? I'll take that as a no. So just to show you here, and this is in here at the top, where should go? FHA self-sufficiency. So if you're buying multi-units, okay, 1 to 2 units, you don't have this test. They can buy, live in one unit, rent out the other. As soon as you're 3 to 4 units, you have what's called a self-sufficiency test, which is pretty damn hard to pass in California. So we take 75% of all the rents of the other units, and those have to cover the new mortgage payment. Right? Does that make sense? Okay. So
Yes.
if, and here's the thing too, right? Like, let's say you're buying it from Bob and Bob's been renting it out to his sister who's on a long-term lease and she's only paying $700 a month and she's not moving out when your buyer buys it, you have to honor that long-term lease, even if the average market rents are really $2,500 a month. So that could blow up your self-sufficiency test there too. Manufactured homes, what do they have to be for FHA? There's two things with FHA. Does anybody know? If you want to buy a manufactured home, what does it have to be on?
The ground. Has
Yeah.
to be affixed.
So it's got to be on permanent foundation, affixed to the foundation. It's got to be real property. It can't be on a land lease. And then when does it need to be built before? Alexis, when does a manufactured home need to be built on or after? Just remember the month and the year. That's all you want to do.
74,
What's that?
70 August of 74, or I think it's 77 or 74.
June of 76?
June of 76. Yes, ma'am.
Wow.
So if it's built before that, and I just came into this too, and I was researching the hell out of it, it would technically be a mobile home. And even my buddy that does mobile homes, there's only one investor that does it. So the reason being is because there were certain standards to manufactured homes after June 15th, 1976. Okay. And then obviously you got to have the what they call the ITBIS, shows like how it was built, what area that it was built to code. Because if you have a manufactured home built in New Jersey, those are going to be different rules and codes they need to fulfill than over here in California. And obviously, if can the property ever be moved, a manufactured home? Like, let's say I bought a manufactured home, I sold it to Latoria. Latoria moved it onto her property. Hey, even though it's affixed to the foundation and it's built after 76, can it be moved at all?
I'm gonna say no.
Nope, cannot be. As soon as it's moved, you're dead in the water. So condos, what do they have to be?
FHA approved.
Yeah, does everybody know how to do that? Does everybody have the link bookmarked? Pretty easy. I'll put it in here. HUD condo approval. Right here. I'll put this in the chat. J condo approval. Okay. So bookmark that FHA HUD condo approval. When you do this, just do it by the state. And then I always just do the zip code because it's going to find the most. And then you just got to know what the condo name is. And if you guys have any questions, there's let me show you here. Oh God, this is gonna, I hate my YouTube channel. If you guys ever need to know how to do this or VA condo approvals, YouTube channel of mine, or is it Realtor University VA condo search, and and it walks you through it in FHA. You do it once or twice, you'll be masters at it. If you guys ever need to learn how to calculate taxes, that's there too. Pretty easy. Ineligible types are anything with a deed restriction, like where I live, the Ladera Ranch. You have what's called, and I think there's some other places out there. The buyer technically it's usually the seller that pays for it, but HUD sees it as a deed restriction. When you buy in and you have like a 1/4%, you got to pay to the HOA to buy into that community. Ladera Ranch, we just started doing some FHAs. We can't do a lot of them on most single family homes. Condotels, co-ops, anything on a lease. You can buy on a lease, but do you guys, anybody know what the rule is where if you're buying a condo and it's on leased land? How long does the lease have to go for? Does anybody know? Catherine,
I don't know.
the lease has to extend at least 5 years after the loan expires. So if the lease expires in 27 years, the max that buyer could take would be a 20-year loan. Perfect lease would be anything over 35 years, because then you can do a 30-year fix. If it expires in 22 years, they got to qualify on a 15-year fixed loan. So that one's pretty easy. 5 years after the loan expires. So when you're thinking about income and when you guys are trying to figure out like, well, is this guy going to qualify, right? There's a line in the sand. There's today forward and today backwards. FHA, you got to document 2 years of history, right? And this goes for everything. So, and there's different layers to it. So, all right, this guy's been a nurse for the last 2 years. Cool. Now his income, how do I qualify him moving forward? What can the lender hang their hat on moving forward as their justifiable income? If they work 40 hours a week and the year to date adds up to that, great. Then you average out any variable pay, bonus, overtime, commission. But just like the person that's self-employed, right? Like if they were self-employed for they were W-2 as a plumber for 2 years and they went self-employed last year, we have to have at least 1 year tax returns. That's the big one. You got to have 1 year return self-employed because we got to be able to calculate the income. But I can use that self-employed income to qualify him moving forward, but to justify the 2 years backwards, he was a plumber as well on a W-2 status. Right? So 2 years back, and what can I justify moving forward? Gaps in employment here. This one, if they've been off work 6 months or more, you have to be back on the job for at least 6 months. That's a hard stop with FHA. Same thing, document 2 months, frequent job changes. So if they've had more than 3 jobs in the last 12 months or changed lines of work. So an underwriter is going to look at this. All right, Steve was a plumber and now he's a teacher. Well, how the hell do you make that jump? You have to prove some sort of certification, right? He had to go to school and get his teacher certificate, or he was a teacher and he became a plumber. Well, now I need a plumbing certificate of some sort to show that he qualifies for that job. That's a big one when there's a different line of work change. Did you get schooling for it? And do you have the certificate to prove it? Or college transcripts. Same thing with the new straight out of college, right? Lady went to college. She got her RN degree. As soon as I have that hire letter, as long as she's full time and there's no real crazy contingencies where they can fire her in the first 90 days, we can buy even without the first pay stub in some cases. So 2 years documented backwards because of the college education and she got her RN degree. And moving forward, she's got a full-time job and it matches up. That kind of makes sense? FHA document 2 years. Even if let's say you got a stay-at-home mom, went back to work full-time 8 months ago. She's been on the job 6 months. Even if I got to go back to when she was 22 before she had kids, I got to find and get a verification of employment to fill in a full 2 years. Even if I got to go back 15 years to get 2 years. So, any questions on those? These 3 right here, I would burn in your brain. Frequent job changes, especially into a new line of work, gaps in employment, If somebody says, hey, I just started a new job, like, oh, that's great. What are you doing? Oh, what did you do before then? Oh, I was in the same line of work. Okay, cool. Well, that check that off. That's good. And if they change lines of work, right? Oh, I just became a plumber and I used to, do whatever. Well, did you get a certificate of any sort? And then how long were you off work? Right? Was it a short job gap, like 30, 60 days? Cool. Then we don't have to worry about being off work for 6 months or more, which means that guy needs to be on the job for 6 months before he can buy. And just young kids fresh out of college, did you get a degree of any sort? New employment that hasn't started, we've gone through that. So the self-employed one, like I said, 1 year self-employed is okay, but how can I document that person's been in that line of work for 2 years? If they're coming from a W-2 job, they're okay. If they're newly self-employed and they don't have any W-2 work in that line of work, then it's going to be kind of hard, to be honest with you. And then you're going to need at least 2 years of tax returns. And these are the types. So like when somebody says they're self-employed, if you want to get into the nitty gritty, you can ask them, okay, great. Well, are you sole prop? Does anybody know what sole prop means? How the person files their taxes?
They're personal. It's just like anyone else would, right?
Correct. So on their personal tax returns, they're going to have what's called a Schedule C. C as in Charlie. And that's where they file it. Do we go off of their gross income or their net income? How do we calculate self-employed income? So you could make $3 million on your top line number, gross receipts, but then you got all these deductions as you go down, car, working from home, depreciation, you name it. So if their line 31 on a tax return is only $10, well, then that's what we're going to use. Would it be helpful if you guys saw one? Okay.
Yes, please.
Right? All of these are deductions going down here. Line 31, he made negative 39,911. This is a side job of his. He's got a W-2 job as well. So if this is the case, then I'm going to say, all right, we're going to go W-2 only, meaning because when lenders fund a loan, like they either get just the W-2 IRS transcripts, or if you're self-employed, you got to get the full IRS 1040 transcripts. And if you do that, this is going to come up. And now we just took a loss on income per month, negative $3,325. That's going to take away from their purchasing power, or it could blow up the loan. So lenders can go what's called W-2 only, where we just get the W-2 transcripts and we don't look at any self-employed income. But if they're self-employed, that's the only way they do it. That's what you got to do, right? But people that have side jobs or something, we can go that route. And then you have S Corp. So you got your corporation taxes. So their K1s, if they made 20 grand on their K1, it's like a W-2 we get. And then their business, did their business profit or is there a loss there? And then there's the pass through of the K1. And then the C Corp is a different calc. LLCs can be single members or multi-members. Same thing with S Corp. So on the K1s for the LLCs and Corps, you're going to get a K1, it'll say percentage of ownership. If it's just me that I own a business, the K1 is going to say 100%. If Dawn and I open a business together, it could be 50-50. It could be 75-20. It could be whatever, 75-25 could be whatever, however we set it up. So rental income. So anytime you hear rental income, let's say somebody owns, for FHA, you have to have owned and have landlord experience for at least 2 years. So let's say I have a rental that I've owned for 5 years and I'm going to buy my new home on an FHA loan that I'm going to personally move into because FHA only allows primary residence. Can I use the rental income, assuming I'm taking a profit on that, if I've owned that rental property for 5 years?
Yes,
Correct, because I got 2 years of landlord experience, right? Let's say I
Right.
got my primary home that I'm living in, it's a conventional loan, and I want to go move to Orange County and buy my new primary residence as an FHA loan, and now I'm gonna rent out my current home. Can I use that as income technically? Even though I don't own any rentals, I'm gonna start renting out my primary that I'm leaving. Dawn, what do you
No.
think? No. Okay, Brittany, you're correct, because I won't have 2 years of landlord experience. Okay, um, getting a little bit deeper into the weeds, FHA got to be real meticulous on rental income and using departing rents. Okay, so for departing rents, Dawn, do you know how much we can use? Let's say you're selling your home, you're gonna rent it out, you're gonna go buy a new primary with FHA, and you can rent it out for $3,000. How much of that $3,000 can I use on your property that you're gonna rent out?
Um,
This goes for every type of loan too, so this is a good one to remember.
no.
We can use 75% of the gross rents. So that 3,000 becomes 2,250. So if my mortgage, let's say, is 2,000 on my home I'm leaving, I'm gonna go back to you again, Dawn. Can I use that remaining 250 as income to help qualify me on the new home? My current
Say that
mortgage is, so we already know we can rent it out for 3,000. We can only use 75% of it to help you offset that mortgage. So that's 2,250. But your current mortgage all in is only 2 grand. Can I use that extra $250 as income to help you qualify on the new property?
no.
Correct. Because you don't have the landlord experience for 2 years, so you can't technically use income from any rents, right? Is kind of the rationale. But being that your mortgage is only 2 grand, we can, it now it's like you're qualifying on paper without that current mortgage because it's being covered by the rents. Right? If your mortgage is 3,000 and you can rent it out for 3,000, that means now when you qualify on the new home, you're taking a $750 hit on your departing residence that you're renting out. But it's still better than a full 3,000 hit, you know? And then this is a big one, 100-mile rule. Okay. There's really 2 or 3 things you got to remember. If you're going to buy, if you currently own a property and it's FHA and you want to go from Rialto to LA and buy your new home with an FHA, whether you're renting it and you're keeping that property, can you use departing rents on that property? And if so, what are the rules? It's called the 100-mile rule. Alexis, we're going to go back to you.
That in order to buy the new one, they have to be at least 100 miles apart.
So you got to slow down. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you there.
That in order to buy the next one, they have to be at least 100 miles apart.
Check one, correct. LA is not 100 miles apart, but let's say it was 100 miles apart.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What are the rules to be able to use and have 2 FHA loans so you can use the rents on your departing?
Sorry. Okay, Leslie. What do you use the rent? Is there for this one? Is there any kind of sufficiency on a home?
Nope,
No.
that's only on multi-units.
To be able to rent it out.
So let's say I got transferred to Arizona from LA. I got an FHA loan in LA. So I can justify the transfer with my income with a new job. And I want to buy my new home in Arizona with an FHA loan. And I'm going to keep my one in LA. But I need that rental income to, that 75% rule for rental income to help me qualify for my new home in LA. When can I use the rental income for my LA property to help me offset when I buy?
I'm not sure.
After 2 years?
Nope. Anybody else want to take a stab? Okay, I'll go through it. This is a tough one. Even lenders get this messed up sometimes. So one, it has to be over 100 miles away. You have to have at least 25% equity in that departing home. That's the big kicker. I've seen deals die in escrow from other lenders because of that. They only had 20% equity. So you got to make sure that that home that they're keeping, if you can justify the new FHA loan, they have 25% equity, and that lender has to get an appraisal to confirm it. So we look at your mortgage statement. All right, how much do you owe? We get the appraisal. All right, how much is it worth? As long as you got at least 25% equity, then you can rent it out.
What if they have under 2 years living there?
What's that?
What if they have under 2 years living there?
Doesn't matter. Yeah, 2 years doesn't matter in that example there. But that's the 100-mile rule. Okay. It's hard as hell. I've done a couple of them, but it's hard to justify. All right, I own my primary residence in Rialto. I want to move to, I don't know, San Bernardino, let's say, for whatever reason, right? What are the exceptions to being able to buy it in that same area? You got to justify somehow, like, I'm living in a 1 bedroom, 1 bath. I bought that before I got married to my wife. Now I have one kid. We're all living in 1 bed, 1 bath, and I'm having another kid. Or my mom's coming to live with me and she's disabled and she needs a room. So you got to justify the family growth. And HUD doesn't necessarily mean like I'm in a 2 bed, 2 bath. Me and my wife live in the one, and we have a son, and now we're having another kid, and now we need another room. They don't look at it that way. They're going to say you can still coexist in a 2 bed, 2 bath with 2 kids, believe it or not. So you really got to dig into it on the growth of the family, even though you're buying a bigger property and on paper it makes sense. So, do you guys remember the average market rents and using everything in rental properties? Do you want to go through that again or no?
I would like to go over it if there's enough time.
Okay. So average market rent. So this goes back to the self-sufficiency rule, right? If you're buying more than 2 units and it's a 3 or a 4 unit property, you got to use the average market rents if those renters are on long-term leases and not getting bought out at closing. So sometimes you'll buy a property and the seller gives them cash for keys. Okay. And because let's say you can rent out room one for 2,000, or it's a 4 unit. You're living in the one, you can rent out all 3 others for 2,000. But you got Steve in the third one who's renting at 1,500, and you got Susan in the fourth unit renting at 1,200. If they're not getting out, then you got to use those leases for that self-sufficiency rule. If every unit is vacant, then the way you qualify is you got to figure out what the average market rents are. There's like Rentometer, or you guys are probably a little bit better on being able to find that out, but you got to figure out what the average market rents are so the lender can say, all right, here's what our mortgage is, here's what the average market rents are, we add them up, yeah, we could pass the self-sufficiency rule. Where the other units that are being rented are the same or greater than your buyer's new mortgage payment. It's got to be self-sufficient. That makes sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay, cool. All right. Waiting periods. There's a flyer on that. It's pretty easy. 2, 2, and 3 with FHA. Debts paid for by others. Okay. So when somebody's like, hey, I got 3 car loans, I co-signed for 2 of them. What's the first thing you guys should be asking on the other 2? Don, what should you be asking? If I tell you, yeah, I got 3 car loans, but only one of them's mine, and I co-signed for the other 2.
If you're making the payment or if they are.
Correct. And then how is that payment being made?
Yeah.
So to omit any installment loan, which includes student loans if they co-sign for them, any installment loans, auto loans, or even mortgage payments, that payment that I co-signed for with my brother has to make those payments for the last two things. 12 months on time. So the lender has to document a full 12 months backwards, not one payment missed. And two, it's got to come out of my brother's account directly to that installment account. So if it's a car loan, I get a copy of the car statement. And then I get a copy of my brother's bank statement. And then I get a 12-month payment history out of my brother's bank statement, bank account, from his account to that creditor. Because if I just get a transaction history, it's not going to show his name, it's going to show the last four of his account number. So how do I match that transaction history up to him? I got to get his most recent bank statement to show that account. But if they pass it to me and I pay it, you cannot omit it on any installment account. So 12 months history going backwards, not one payment you can't document, and it's got to go from A to B, not A, B, and then to them. That's less than 10 months left. So somebody's like, hey, my car payment, I only got 5 months left on it. Okay, this is something you guys probably aren't going to know, but it's good to kind of understand. If it's conventional, if you have 10 months or less left, you can omit it. FHA, if it's 10 months or less left, you can omit it when the payment is 5% or less of the buyer's gross income. So if 5% of their, let's say their gross income per month is 10 grand, right? 5% of that is $500. So as long as that car payment is 500 or less, we can omit it. FHA has an additional layer. IRS debts. So this is a big one too. If I'm on an, if I just filed my 2024 taxes and I just got on an IRS installment payment plan, the lender's obviously got to include that payment monthly in their debt to income. But what else needs to happen with FHA?
I'm not sure about that one.
They got to make at least 3 months of payments to the IRS on time. You cannot prepay it either. It's the dumbest rule in the world. So you got to be on a payment plan, which could take 30 to 45 days if they jam on it. And then once they get that, then you got to wait pretty much a month and a half or 2 months. And you can start looking once they make their second payment, because by the time we close, they have to have made the third payment. And you can't prepay it, unfortunately. What is the Cavers list? Does anybody know what the Cavers list is?
I'm not sure.
Isn't that like people who have defaulted on government loans?
Exactly. Think of the Cavers list. If you hear Cavers list, think of the no-fly list with like the FAA. If you defaulted on student loans, which is federal debt, veterans, if they get I think it's called VA Gold Star, if they default on that, that's technically from the VA, which is government debt. And we pull a caver. So anytime I see somebody with and unfortunately Alexis and I we experience this. So anytime I see somebody with any defaulted student loans that are in collection, I immediately pull the cavers list. This guy had a USDA loan from I think 2018 that he defaulted on. It was nowhere on credit, didn't show up anywhere until we got into escrow. Underwriter pulls cavers, and boom, now we're dead in the water. We had to go conventional. So sometimes it doesn't show up anywhere, but I've never seen that before, to be honest with you. Usually you'll see something on credit, and you're like, ah, shit, better get in front of this. Okay, gift funds. Do we have to source gift funds anymore with FHA? Nope. Okay, don't have to source gift funds, which gives you an out too, right? Let's say they got $10,000 in cash. Can we use cash? If we can't source it, we can't use it. So the workaround, kind of the trick with gift funds now, is if your buyer's got 15 grand in cash, well, he can give it to his mom and she wires it directly to escrow at the end of the day.
Yeah, makes sense.
Right? Now we got a workaround. Conventional, it's same thing, but FHA is finally following suit. And the nice thing with FHA, you can actually get gift funds from the employer. As long as there's no repayment, we fill out the gift letter and we're all good there. Allowable sources, these are all pretty straightforward. Remember, everything's sourcing. So if they're like, oh, I just sold my car, or I'm gonna sell my car, you need to tell them, you need to talk to the lender because everything needs to be documented. I need to get 2 or 3 proofs of value, meaning I need to go to, like, if they're selling a car, I need to go to KBB, get a printout of what that car's value would be if I sold it third party or turned it in. I need to go to like some other website, whether it's Craigslist or, Upsale or whatever that is, to get another thing of value. I need a copy of the check that that person paid you. And then we need the bill of sale signed by both parties, and then probably the DMV transfer out of their name. So if they're selling anything, even if it's a trailer, you got to document the hell out of it so we can prove it. Cash advances on credit cards, can't use those. That should be crowdfunding sites. Can't use those. Unsourced cash deposits, you could drop $1 million in the bank, but I can't use a penny of it. And funds from a donor, that's not on FHA's guidelines. So allowable donors, family members, cousins are not a family member. Technically, you can't use cousins. You can use lifelong friends, but you got to document it somehow. That's the burden of proof, right? Like we had this one girl, she was buying a home. She was getting it from her godfather. How do you prove that? The guy was able to find something from her day when she got christened as a little kid with his name on it. So that was like 20 years back. And then you can use it. Non-occupying co-borrowers. Okay. So co-signers, if they're not going to occupy and they're going to help you qualify, if they're a family member, or excuse me, if they're a family member, you can do 3.5% down, just like a regular FHA loan. If they are not a family member, what is the minimum down payment? Does anybody know?
Is it 12%?
Nope. You're thinking VA. I like what you're thinking, but you're thinking VA. It's 25% down. So that's why when they say I got a cosigner, well, is it family? It's got to be family somehow, because most people aren't going FHA if they got 25% down. FICO score, that's pretty straightforward. Citizenship. I mean, really, you got to have a green card now. Sometimes you can get away with an EAD card which is a employment authorization card, but they only take certain categories. Like there's 1 million categories, A35, B52. So you got to make sure it's the one that works. So when in doubt, just run it by the lender. Okay, PMI, let me see here. What do you guys want to go through? Because we're running out of time here. Do you want to go through interested party contributions? That they're probably some of the most lenient. It's 6%. If you look at all others, which this is in the website as well. So conventional breaks it down with less than 10%, it's 3%, 10 to 25, it's 6%, 25% or more, it's 9%. If it's investment property, it's only 2%. VA allows 4%, FHA allows 6% of the sales price. What I would say is just kind of burn this part into memory. This is under the Q&A section. So FHA is very lenient. I always tell people the difference is conventional loans are very, very credit score sensitive, not only just for rate, but for PMI. So FHA rates are usually 0.5% lower. It's really like 3/4 right now with the spread, but minimum FICO scores, they'll go down lower than conventional. Conventional is 580, or excuse me, FHA is 580. Conventional minimum FICO score is 620. They're going to allow higher debt to income. It goes up to pretty much 56%. Conventional is 49.99. The main kicker is FHA PMI. Whether you got a 580 or a 780 FICO, you're getting 0.55 of the loan balance. If you're conventional and you're going with a low FICO score, that could be like 1.25. So 500,000 at 0.55%, their monthly PMI would be 229.16 cents. But if you went conventional, same loan amount, and it's 1.25% PMI, or PMI is going to be 520.83 cents. So not only is the rate going to be higher, but your PMI is going to be damn near $300 higher too.
Right, what would be considered a low PMI for conventional, assuming you had a really good FICO score?
Usually you're at like 20 bips.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's like, because it goes, if you have more than one borrower, it gets better. If you're both, it prices all the way up to a 760 FICO, believe it or not. So if you're both 740 and above, you'll probably be there. At least 5% down. The less you put down conventional, like 3% for first time buyers, even if you're perfect walking on water, your PMI is going to be higher because of the loan to value. So if you were at that and you were at like 0.2 basis points, it'd only be like $83 a month. So, but FHA, that's what's nice about it. You know, if you're 620, 640 FICO, your PMI is going to be the same as somebody with a perfect credit score. Retirement accounts, the one thing, if somebody's like, oh, I got a pension, I'm going to pull from my pension, you cannot pull from a pension. You can only do that when you retire or you leave the company. Everything else, usually you can pull from 403Bs, 401Ks, you name it. FHA does not have income limits, but they do have loan limits. Can I buy a second home or an investment property with FHA? Technically, no, minus that FHA 100-mile rule if you're buying outside of it. And you got that 25% equity and you're departing. Can you use an FHA loan more than once? You can use it on every single home purchase you do, assuming you're not within that 100-mile rule and all that good stuff. Let's see. Do you have to be a first-time home buyer? No. First-time home buyer is somebody that has not owned in the last 3 years. What I would do is I would download the waiting periods, understanding the interested party contributions as well. And then that self-sufficiency is this one right here. Understand that one.
You are awesome. Thank you.
Appreciate the lie, but you're welcome. Thank you.
It's the truth.
Anything in there that you guys had questions on or want to revisit or?
So if there's no renters in there, you can use what the monthly rent should be towards it?
Average market rents. The appraiser's got to notate it.
Okay.
So if you think like the average, like there's something called Rentometer. It's a website. You can punch in the address, how many bed, how many bath. That'll give you an idea, but I'm sure you ladies are able to find it out a lot better than I am to a degree with something else.
I like rental meter because usually we would use the MLS to track the rental rates, but that's only for owners and property management companies that will put it on the MLS, and not all do. A lot of them will use like Zillow or something. And so rental meter, it gives you even more data to support whatever you get off of the MLS.
No, thank you though. Actually, I do have one question. So I know you said the PMI could be slightly lower on the conventional if they have great credit. Is there any other reason, like if somebody has good credit, why they would want to go conventional over FHA?
If somebody has good credit, why they
Yeah.
would want to?
Why they would or wouldn't either way? Like
Well,
what's
the
the
loan
difference?
limits are going to be higher. Like conventional loan limits are 806,500 in Riverside and San Bernardino County, and FHA it's in the 600s.
Oh, okay.
So that'll give them a little more purchasing power. If they want to buy a second home or an investment property, you got to go conventional. Condos would be another reason. FHA, the condo's got to be approved, HUD approved. And if it's not, then you got to go conventional. One of the big ones is condos, loan limits, or if they want to do 3% down instead of 3.5%, but I rarely get that. Non-occupying cosigner, if they're not a family member, they can still do 3% or they can do 5% down. So that would be one instead of 25%. If they're on the CalBRE list, You can go conventional. You can't go FHA because they don't check that. We can do down payment assistance again, but
I think that was a good one. I think, well, Don, that would be new for Don too, to hear that one. I don't remember how long ago that one was done though. I think I missed being on the call for that one, but that's always a
Yeah.
good one.
I wouldn't mind that one either.
Yeah,
yeah, we can look at Cal Haffenberg's GSFA and then we'll pull up those. If one of you guys could shoot me one of those programs where they're like, oh, you know, in LA, they'll give you 120,000 down. I'll pull up those guidelines in there and I'll show you just how small that window has to be able to qualify for that one. Because they got their income limits and their purchase price limits and all this other crazy stuff you need to hit to be able to qualify. So. Okay, cool. We'll do that one then, down payment assistance. All right. Well, if you guys have any questions come up after the fact, just give me a jingle.
thank you.
All right.
Thank you. All right.
You're so
Bye.
welcome. Talk
Thank
to you later.
you.
Bye.